Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jes Min from Recommend.my, Malaysia's leading home services platform. We connect customers to home improvement and home maintenance service professionals, not just in Malaysia, but in Indonesia and Thailand as well. The COVID-19 pandemic has pretty much, blown into our region like a storm in January, February 2020. And March onwards saw governments responding to it with varying degrees of movement controls and mandatory business closures. Now, these restrictions have had significant impact on businesses, F&Bs and restaurants, malls and entertainment centers closing for 2 months now, and most large physical events being postponed. Right now, Malaysia and Thailand has begun to open up, but the rest of the region seems a little slower to follow. Many startups, small companies, even big companies are struggling financially. Some are forced to put employees on pay reduction, unpaid leave, or even releasing them into the market. Today, I have with me some pretty experienced startup founders, and in my mind, one of the toughest, most resilient ones around. I'll let them introduce themselves, but essentially we have with us Chen Chow, CC from Fave, an F&B and retail rewards platform. We have Wai Hong from StoreHub and BPIT, a point of sale system for also retail and F&B, and Derek from WOBB, a Gen Y hiring platform. All these businesses operate in at least 2 to 3 markets in Southeast Asia, and all have been significantly impacted by COVID-19. So CC, why don't you start with the introductions, and then Wai Hong and Derek. We will take questions at the end of the webinar. So please type them into your FB live chat, and my team member here, Fiona, will be noting them down. So go ahead, CC.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jasmine, for this. Yeah, so I think I'm CC from Fave. So we are a merchant digital platform. So I think focusing on connecting offline businesses to digital. So I think that COVID-19, I think you all may have already read about it, that COVID-19 is the best way to get everyone to digitalize. I think not the CEO, not the CIO, CTO, whatever. So I think during the last 2-3 months, I think the amount of digitalization that happens, I think has gone significant. I think all of us here, 4 of us, I think all the different platforms are all working towards different form of digitalization. I think there's still lots more need to be done, I think, for the hundreds of thousands of the offline businesses in all kind of sectors, right? So I think in it, and I think we are all one business at a time, one outlet at a time, one person at a time to bring in digital, and I think to drive towards bringing greater efficiency, lowering costs, greater revenue, and all those kind of things. Okay, looking forward to speak to everyone.
Was it my turn?
Yep, that's right.
Hi everyone, my name is Wai Hong, Chieftain at StoreHub. Essentially, StoreHub is an operating system for retailers and restaurants to kind of manage their online and offline sales, channels, customers, inventory, pretty much the entire spectrum of things that a bricks and mortar, or just in general, a retail or restaurant business would need to manage in trying to engage with their customers, sell online, or even sell in store. So this is essentially what we did. We launched Beep, or Beepit, as some of you guys may know it, which primarily did food delivery. At the start of the MCO, we did it within 48 hours, which was kind of crazy because we barely slept any hours in those 2 days. And some of you guys might have ordered from Beep. Would love to hear anyone who has and what kind of experiences you have. So yeah.
Hi everyone. So I'm Derek from WOBB. We are a hiring platform, a job platform. We specialize in a certain segment, which is like a professional junior market. So if you're a recent graduate, up to say about 7 to 10 years experience, we built the platform, but we designed the platform for this group. A bit of background. So I used to be a headhunter last time. And one of the reasons why I first started WOBB was because I realized for a lot of young people right now, finding the right job is actually very difficult because you're applying blindly all the time. You're going on, I know a lot of the job platforms more or less look the same. You're applying to like text job descriptions, and you kind of have to hope and see whether you find the right company or not. And you only know during the interview. So we said, hey, why don't we change that? So if you go on the platform, you find they're very media rich. We have a lot of photos, videos, like talking about different companies, what their culture is like before you even apply. So basically saving you a lot of time and making more informed decisions, right? So you don't waste your time. If you're not interested, you don't apply. And I think giving power back to the job seeker I think is one of the things that we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
Got it, brilliant. So for those of you who don't know, Derek here is the webinar king. So we have got a very high standards to work towards. Okay,
webinar
guys.
king.
Yes. Okay, so let's get down to the juicy part, right? So we hear in the market that COVID-19 has been disastrous to business, all doom and gloom, businesses closing left and right, everybody's depressed. But there is surprisingly little research on how much volumes and customer demand has really dropped, right? So CC and Wai Hong, you guys have pretty good data on the retail and F&B space out there. Can you tell us exactly how much volumes have dropped in Malaysia and how has this compared to other countries in Southeast Asia as well? How have businesses been impacted? How many of them are likely to close down? We want real numbers.
Yeah, I'll jump in first. I think in Malaysia, we saw the massive, I think even prior to COVID already, right? We really hear people talking about how there were dips of anywhere from 10 to 20% across the board from last year to this year in the comparisons of the January and February and March months. And of course, after the lockdowns were implemented, we saw massive drops in revenue for stores, both retail and restaurants. On average, we saw anywhere from 85% all the way up to 88% drops in revenue. Meaning, if you were doing 1,000, or just use real numbers, 100,000 in sales last month, this month you're doing 12,000, right? So that's very, very crazy. And this is not just in Malaysia, this is across the board. We see this happening in Philippines, we see this happening in Thailand. Again, in those ranges in terms of revenue drops. So very, very significant drops in revenue. Obviously, your rental relief and all those other subsidies don't cover that much. So there is a massive pressure on businesses. We also see that the reality is that even after the restrictions were loosened, so like we saw the CMCO come into place in Malaysia, the kind of like recovery was not full, not even close to full, right? So what was a 85% drop, kind of like reduced a little bit to about 60-ish%. So in terms of the drops, it's still more than half the revenue of merchants are still missing from their P&L and balance sheet. And that's the reality of what we're seeing. We are seeing shops closing down everywhere. Like I'm sure you've seen the news, the popular SS15 bubble tea craze, like where everyone was queuing up for like 1 hour, 2 hour queues to buy bubble tea in SS15. Plenty of those shops have closed down. There's basically a lot of closures, right? And the reality is that it's just impossible to sustain a business on revenue drops of 85% or even 65%. It's just not sustainable.
Right, and for example, F&B, their margins were not even thick to start off with, right? Everybody is kind of treading on thin ice. Got it. And CC, did you see the same thing as well in your markets?
Yeah, I think thanks a lot, Wai Hong, for sharing. I think quite resonate. I think like we see a dip, let's say like Malaysia on the March 18, pretty much 85-90% basically crashed down, right? So I think basically at that time there are different kind of businesses. So I think let's say for retail, a lot of them in the non-essential is basically 100% down, right? And then I think for the F&B at that point, some of them decided to open for takeaway and delivery. So I think for some of them, it will be various degree of 5%, 10% to maybe good one, maybe 20-30%. A few extraordinary one like My Burger Lab and a few others. I think just Link Cake that I think Wai Hong has a few of those were getting close to 100% or more, right? So I think, but those are the rare few. But I think a lot of it basically would be, I would say on average during MCO period, the 6 weeks where we are full lockdown, I think most businesses that open will be anywhere between 60 to 90% down, right? That's predominant. And then a bunch of those have zero, right? And I think during the CMCO, starting from 4th of May, I think we see in the first few days where people gradually going out, but at the off-peak hours. So people go out at 11 o'clock, 3 p.m. lunch. So the off-peak hours, the first few days. And I think gradually on a week 2, we started seeing people going in at lunchtime. And then I think dinner time is still gradually picking up in the last 1 week-ish, especially helped by last weekend, but still nowhere near it. Let's say, example, for those in KL, at 8:30, you just go drive at, let's say, TTDI or Hatamas, or if you go to SS15, you'll see it's quite dead town, right? You can easily find parking. I think that's sort of, and I think one of the good gauge for me is when I go to mall, how easy to find parking, right? I think pretty much any mall, you can now find parking still within seconds. even at a very popular mall. So I think that's sort of where it is. I think right now where it is, I think it's quite close to, I think, what Wai Hong said. I think most business on average are down 60+%. I think that's sort of the norm for all. And I think, and that's at a revenue level. I think at a profitability level, some of them is actually dropped even more at this current standpoint. So I think because a lot of them are able to, whether if you do delivery, there are a lot of delivery service that is charged a lot of margins, or those that providing different products that is maybe lower margin because they do discount and everything. So I think I would say that at the gross profit level for a lot of restaurants is maybe even 70-75% down.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, looking really challenging, because if the margins are thin, and volumes drop, unless they can increase prices, which is unlikely to happen because, people are now extremely cost sensitive, it is going to be really tough. Well, let's hear from Derek. Well, the talk of the town, right, Derek, is that unemployment in Malaysia will definitely increase. It's already gone up from 3.2% in January to about 3.9%. So basically the number of people being let go is a lot higher than those that are being hired, right? I mean, can you comment on that? Have you seen the same trend reflected in your own data, right? You have got a business called Hiredly. Is Hiredly really happening now, or is it really quietly or firedly, right? Tell us, are people hiring?
So it's interesting. I have a lot of people actually messaging me privately, like asking for help. And some of these are companies that have actually shut down. There's some companies that have shut down. They were very public, like there's a big press release and all, and people found out. But there are many that are also like credible companies that actually shut down, but it's not been made public. Some have put employees on unpaid leave, or some have put like significant pay reduction. So I'm not sure how much of this has been captured by the 3.9% that you mentioned just now, because I suspect it might be bigger than that. I'm not sure, right? This is just based on people that approach me. When we did a survey recently, I did a couple of polls and surveys. Apparently, about 20% of the people said they lost their job recently due to the MCO COVID-19 situation. So that's just about current employment. The thing that I monitor most closely is like the companies that are still hiring, right? I monitor that quite closely, and the way I do that is I look at the ads that are being run on all the major job platforms around Malaysia, and I think the number of jobs being advertised has dropped close to 70% since MCO started. 70. I think it's a bit less now, but something between 60 to 70% of what it usually is. So it's like a double whammy, right? So if you lost a job now, finding a job is also very hard because there are less jobs. So there are many challenges, I think, for people who are actually looking for jobs.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because our volume, I think at the start of MCO, there was about a week or two where everybody really panicked and say like, it's the end of the world, we're not going to do anything. And so we saw volumes drop by 40%. So at which point we obviously freaked out and had like, scenario A, scenario B, until scenario G, right? And my spreadsheet was literally shitty situation, super shitty situation. And that's how we actually named our scenarios. And then after 2 weeks, we saw that the demand has gone up. I guess people are realizing that they're using their air cons a lot more than they used to before. And they're keeping 2 weeks of vegetable in the fridge, right? So these things have to be kept tip-top condition. And the volumes really went up. I think very quickly we were pre-MCO, and we are probably multiple times of that now. But what was interesting is that a lot of our service professionals did not come back to the market, even though they could. And one of the things they said is like, my team gone already, like all disappeared already, balik kampung somewhere, or went back to Indonesia or Philippines or wherever. So they couldn't find people to work. But here you are telling me that there's plenty of people without jobs. So clearly there's a little bit of a disparity between where people want to work and where there are real jobs, right? And that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, guys, have you taken any big business changes to counter the impact of COVID-19? Either defensive strategies or offensive strategies, launching new products that has worked in maybe the isolation economy. What has worked and what hasn't? And how many % of revenue have your pivots delivered really? One example is that many people say, oh, delivery, is going to make up so much in terms of the walk-in customers. But, you've heard from the rest, it doesn't really make up. It's maybe 20, 30% maybe, but it never it never makes up for walk-in customers. So maybe we can start for Derek first, and then, Wai Hong and CC. What big business changes, defensive or offensive, what has worked, and numbers?
Yeah, so for us, it's quite interesting. I'm not sure if I will use the word pivot. So initially I was saying that a lot of you can see a lot of jobs advertised have dropped about 60, 70%, right? Like for a lot of platforms. On WOBB, but it's dropped also, but it's only dropped by about 10, 15%. So when that happened, I was actually very curious. Hey, how come everyone dropped more than half and we only dropped 10, 15%? And then I realized that a lot of the employers that uses a lot of the tech companies, they live on the internet, so they're still hiring, they're still growing. Some of them might be doing better. Like there might be a short dip, but then now suddenly they're growing really fast again. And there are a lot of companies that, because digitization is a big thing right now, companies that want to digitize are starting to think, oh, but I need the talent, right? It can't be the CEO learning how to run something on Facebook, for example. I need the talent to digitize. So they're looking for platforms, because we do like mostly junior professional. So we have a lot of people that people want to hire. So for us, it's kind of emphasizing and focusing on this in this current situation, because we used to obviously do all kinds of talent at junior level. Now we said, oh, we're going to focus on the type of talent that people want to hire, so that so more employers will kind of choose to use us because we have the talent pool that we need, the ones that are still hiring, because we recognize that many employers are not. So we are just going to focus on the group of companies that are still hiring, which so happens to be our base to start with. But we wanted to expand much further than that. And then we kind of say, let's hold that back for a moment and just focus on our core, the type of companies that we always use. And you will see, obviously, we did do a lot of physical events before, but we've moved everything on social media. I mean, when you made the joke saying I'm a webinar king, I'm not a webinar king, but but because all the attention is on social platforms right now, we've also moved everything onto social platforms. So it was something that we've always done. I'm not aware of many recruitment companies that are doing it currently in Malaysia, but we've always done it, but we've now pushed even further, and to kind of, I wouldn't say widen the gap, but to kind of push what we consider to be our strength.
Got it. No, that's interesting. But hey, so two questions here, right, Derek? Maybe echoing some of what the audience wants to ask as well. So you are dealing now with an enlarged sort of like supply of people who are looking for jobs. And these are probably people who have been deemed as maybe not critical to running business, which is why they are, I guess, released, right? So how do you then look for people who would like to hire them? Because you have to assume that they are inherently trainable to pick up different skills, because otherwise, who's going to hire? When someone releases a lot in the market, it's not like the other competitor is going to mop up all the supply, right? There needs to be an element of retraining or reskilling somewhat. And the second one is that why would employers still need a platform? Because now they have so many supply, they have so much choices. They can say, submit a video, or do crazy things, 15 push-ups, before we won't even consider an interview with you. Why do they still need a platform?
Yeah, so it's a very big question. A short answer is, I think quality talent still matters, right? So if someone actually loses their job, let's say the company shut down, right? And everyone lost their job. There are lots of good people there who are highly employable, highly employable. And they have choice, even though they've been retrenched. They can choose between 3 or 4 companies, and employers still have to compete for them. Especially when we talk about digitization, right? Like you can't just hire someone off the street, which relates to your initial comment. Reskilling, I think, this is my opinion. I don't think it's easy to just say, oh, we're going to take someone that is not from a digital background, not from a STEM background, and suddenly make this person a programmer. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can become a programmer. It's largely to do with how people are. Like if you ask me, obviously I'm a founder, but you ask me to be a programmer, I probably can't do it. It's not really my thing. It's not my strength. And I could force myself to learn programming, but I would never grow very far in that career. So people are built very differently. So I think that companies are still having to compete for this talent, and now they might have a screening problem. So, like for example, in WOBB, recognizing that they might have a screening problem, we build in things like video cover letters. We have like a chat bot that helps them automatically interview. So it helps them get to the right person a little bit faster. So the problem still shifts, right? But the solution has to change a little bit, but still at the end of the day, right, we are trying to help the employer save time to get to the right talent the quickest way possible. Just that the market conditions have changed, so we adapted to that.
Brilliant. So you're helping them sieve through. Sorry, go ahead.
Something like, I mean, just to give you guys a sense of like how job conditions have changed. Like in the past, there was this particular position that we were hiring for that was maybe about 60 applicants a month. Now, the same position is getting 40 applicants a day, right? So if you think about just that shift in market conditions, it's crazy. It's actually really crazy. I think Derek alluded to one very large, I think it was JobStreet, right? JobStreet platform that we were tracking the jobs there. It was like 30,000 plus listed pre-MCO. And right now, I think it's hovering around 10K. If not lower. So just the number of listed jobs is just nuts, right? And just the scale of that is crazy.
Any of you guys have comments on that? Any big initiatives that you launched? I don't know, maybe Wai Hong, you could start.
Yeah, I've been talking about Beep for a very long time. Every single webinar I've been asked.
Yeah, what is that? Tell us more.
Yeah, so I mean, just the short of the long story is that the long and short of it is that you know, StoreHub is a core platform. Many of us know as like, you know, point of sale, inventory management. You know, the iPad that people see in the store, right? But what we noticed, obviously, restaurants, they needed to sell online. They needed to find a new stream of revenue. So, and the bigger platforms, the Grab, the Foodpandas, those guys are really expensive, right? They charge you 35% commissions for every single sale. And so the restaurants that were our customers, they were saying, hey, you know, is there a way for us to take orders online and still do delivery without having to, you know, fork out? Because if the number of delivery orders was only 10-20% of my sales, it's okay, I can still manage that. But once it's 100% of my sales, those commissions will kill the business. And so we launched Beep, which is an extension of what we were doing before, which was Beep QR ordering. So you could walk into stores, StoreHub stores, and take out your mobile phone, scan a QR code. So instead of dealing with a waiter who always gets my order wrong, instead of going to the counter to pay, instead of like, you know, touching menus, which are kind of, you know, gross, looking, no, I don't have to do any of that. I just take out my phone, I scan a QR code, I order and pay, right? So we adapted that system and we added delivery onto that. So it's the same Beep system that allows you to kind of like order directly from your favorite restaurant and get the food delivered via a third-party logistics provider who would charge you a fixed fee. So instead of the platform like Grab or Foodpanda taking 35% from you, you know, we basically just pass on that cost to the merchant, help them manage that. So if they want to charge if you as a consumer want to pay get charged the full amount, the merchant can do that. If they want to subsidize some of that cost, they can do that too. So basically, essentially, Beep is a platform play. We're not a food delivery company. We don't have our own drivers. We don't have any of that. We connect up with the logistics companies, but we give the power of kind of like control back to the merchant so that they actually have the flexibility of changing up their menu, running their own promotions, subsidizing as much of the delivery costs as they are willing to or able to, connecting with their customers, having all the customer data in their own hands. So all of that is basically what we did. We launched the delivery function within 48 hours of the MCO, 20 hours over 2 days, and I think 12 to 18 hour work days for the next 5 or 6 weeks. That was a major shift. I think one of the biggest things that we saw that made the work so meaningful and what kept us going, our Red Bull essentially was looking at this. There's this little chat bot in our chat groups that listed every single time an order comes through, like ding, 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 right? That was like our Red Bull, you know. Every time we looked at, oh, there's a new merchant, oh, wow, there's new orders. And the cool thing is this, right? That every single order represented cash flow. It represented dollars that would otherwise not be flowing into the merchant's hands to pay for salary, to pay for rent, to pay for people's livelihoods. And that was really amazing to watch. In fact, some stores were super innovative. They went from doing like 20K of sales as a small little cafe in the past pre-MCO to 200,000 a month doing delivery. It was nuts. Like they did most of the marketing themselves. Like we supported them as much as we could, but it was all driven by the merchants themselves. So I think it's really interesting because, you know, it's a kind of like when times are really difficult, people need to reinvent their business model, and they can even do it in a way that actually makes their business even better. So I think that's kind of like the big shift that we saw for small businesses who are reinventing their business model. They can actually do even better than pre-MCO.
Got it. So if I see it, I've seen the spam, right, from you mostly.
Oh, wow,
timeline. So I'm quite familiar with it, and I thought it was a brilliant idea, right? Because we have a player in the market who's taking a very large margin, and a lot of merchants who are a little bit resentful. Why are you taking so much? I'm doing the hard work. I'm really suffering now. Why you take so much, right? And I think it's very interesting how you have become like the Shopify equivalent, right? So you put all their menus online so they can plus, and then you connect to a Lala Move or something on the back end, and so they pick up. Now, I've got a bigger question on that, because I think food deliveries, groceries, they're notoriously difficult to get right? And they pretty much control from ordering up to delivery and, right to the customer. So how does a player like BP plus someone else be more successful than another player, apart from taking smaller margins? How does that work? But we'll cover that later. Maybe CC, you want to comment on something in terms of what you guys did?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so thanks a lot. Yeah, so I think in terms of as the MCO happened, right? So I think one of the first thing that we did was, I think at the time, the first few days is like, okay, what should we drive focus on, right? So I think one is, I think at the time we were talking about flatten the curve. This was in mid-March, right? So I think, well, okay, let's not drive more people to the street, right? So I think and then we knew that the restaurants, everything, what they need besides the revenue drop is actually cash flow. So I think that was what we drive towards the Save Our Faith.com, right? So I think we actually decided, okay, let's start an initiative, and we outside our Fave platform, and we actually decided that, say, okay, we're going to waive all charges. So basically, we're not going to even take anything at all. We absorb all credit card fees, all fees, everything, right? And so basically, from March 18 all the way until today, for e-cards, everything is free. And basically, think of it is during the MCO period. Let's say in March, consumer buy an e-card, the consumer will pay, we will pay the restaurants immediately or retailers immediately. So this enables the restaurant retailers get the cash flow to pay their staff during the MCO period. And customer has 6 months to spend it. So I think over the next few months, there will be more people coming in. So let's say people may be buying a 50 ringgit cash voucher. And basically from there, you can go back there and enjoy the meal, right? So I think, and there's a wide range of cash voucher, whether from the TGIF to Boat Noodle to La Juiceria to all those places, right? So I think we feature more than 1,000 brands out there that bring their cash voucher across. So I think that was one of the first one they did, and I think we were lucky that a lot of celebrities as well, from Harif Iskandar to a lot of DJs to a lot of even restaurant owners, basically go on posting and sharing. And I think on the social media as well, people were sharing about what is their local favorite restaurants that they want to save, right? So Save Our Faith. So I think that was one part that we did. I think and then as we go on it as well, I think it's like, how do we extend the offerings, right? So I think that's another aspect that we went on. So I think back then, I think people familiar with Fave, knowing that several categories that we have, but of course the certain categories were affected. Let's say like beauty, wellness, travel, attractions, right? So a lot of those are pretty much still closed today, right? And we are still pending on when the government will open for those groups. So I think then it's like, what can we do to add on offerings for the users, right? So I think then from there we went on to get in a bunch of products. So let's say some of the products like kitchenware, a lot of people like to cook and everything. So a lot of kitchenwares sell quite well, laptops, phones sell quite well, groceries. So I think we work with a lot of those sellers, and I think a lot of the grocery sellers that we work with are those people that will be selling B2B. So these people used to be selling to restaurants, and with the restaurants are closed and sadly having much less sales, these people now have lost their sales as well. So I think we work with them to basically turn their meat, veggie, seafood, etc. available for public, and I think enable them to sell it at basically close to where the price that they sell to restaurant, which is lower than hypermarkets. And I think logistics wise, I think in terms of delivery, we knew that we won't go and build deeper into it. So I think what we did was, after people purchased, the consumer can basically have a WhatsApp link or a URL link. So WhatsApp link basically they click on it, it will pre-fill with a message. They just key in a couple more address or whatever details, and then they send it. They and the seller would basically arrange on how to deliver or when to pick up, right? So I think we turn the process enable to it, and basically the same thing. I think what Wai Hong said is basically turn the margin back to the seller, because we don't charge those margins that those food delivery providers have to charge, right? So I think it's basically shifting those aspects, and I think that as we go on as well, I think enable. So I think the Facebook, Instagram that StoreHub did as well together with us, with Facebook as well. So I think that where enable all our e-cards enable to be connected to Instagram profile. So I think for anyone that has an Instagram profile, you can basically just add in, let's say, the Fave e-cards, and basically people can go to purchase it from there, click in, integrated directly into Instagram, right? So I think that's one aspect. And I think yesterday we just got the news from Singapore that Singapore government appoint us as a authorized partner to work with them to digitize the heartlands of Singapore. Then starting for various precincts, starting from Bedok, Clementi, and a bunch of areas, right? So I think Ang Mo Kio. So I think basically going to different areas of Singapore and basically digitize them. So I think those are some of the things, but I think there's a lot of things that I think during this period, I think a lot is like put our heads up and say, okay, what should we drive? And I think it's keep on every day shifting on it and optimizing and driving towards.
Got it. Thank you so much. Really cool ideas from all of you. Well, since you've talked so much about food delivery and grocery delivery as well, let me jump to that question, and then after that I'll go back on my other questions. So there's something about this whole thing that I find it hard to understand. Well, firstly, if you look at say food delivery, right? It's a challenging business, right? The revenues are high, volumes are high, but honestly, in MCO period, I think the volumes have gone up by 50% maybe. Around that 30-50%, it has not gone up 300 or 400%, which means that the market has enlarged a little bit, but yet the problems are even worse. So for example, restaurants are having shortage of staff, shortage of supply, they can't get the flour they want, they can't get the good stuff they want. So that is, even more problematic in MCO. And then, during MCO period, you find that workers are not all at the restaurant, right? Some of them go back to kampong, they're not available, and we have Ramadan as well, which means that the eating period has effectively kind of like squeezed into a very small, narrow window where the vast majority of the day, nobody orders. And then suddenly one period, everybody wants to order. And if it rains in the evening, like it is raining now, then all the drivers are stuck underneath highways, right? So everything gets late, people don't eat on time. So I guess what I'm saying is that food delivery is very challenging. It needs to get to people on time. It relies on so many different moving parts, right? And it's hard to get profitable, right? You can count on one hand the number of food delivery startups over the world who are profitable. Same with grocery delivery. It's very challenging. The economics of scale needs to be there. Operational efficiency needs to be there. Now you have all these different startups, and it's not just Fave, it's not just StoreHub. There are many other different players, lorry players, that are now doing grocery, but it's really very piecemeal. So essentially, you have got a Shopify for food, right? Or Shopify for groceries. Add that into a cart, and then people like Lala Move, Zoom Delivery, and whoever else will come and pick up the food, right? So essentially, it is piecemeal. You don't have control all the way there. But you are hoping that by charging cheaper prices, the restaurants are then happy to share that URL or to do the marketing themselves. So it's literally in exchange for the inefficiencies on the way, I will charge you less if I don't have to spend marketing dollars to promote this thing. Is that a good summary of what you guys are doing?
I think it addresses some of the challenges in a meaningful way. And I think definitely, as you mentioned before, prior to COVID, no one would proudly proclaim that they are a profitable food delivery startup. It's just not a game that anyone, except for the guys in China, have been able to build sustainably. And there are many reasons for this. Firstly, I would say this, we jumped in head first without thinking about any of it, okay? Like, we did it because we just saw restaurants suffering. Like, it was a mission-driven thing. I'm serious. I spoke to restaurant owners, and they were like, if 100% of our sales is on those platforms that charge me 35%, I might as well close down. I have no margin to make. Like back then, when it was 10 or 20% of my sales I'm giving that kind of margins away, okay I treat it as like, get a bit of economies of scale, get a bit of new kind of customers, introduction to my food kind of thing. But when 100% of your sales, you have to give up 35% away. Think about it. If you're doing 100K of sales a month, you're paying someone 35,000 ringgit.
Yep.
A lot of money.
It is.
Right?
It's
but
huge.
But then at the same time, people are saying, hey, I'm still not a profitable food delivery startup. Why? Why is that the case? So I think the big reason here, and most people don't understand this, is that the logistics of it is painful, and that to actually have a good experience, right, you have to actually get your tech right. You have to get your driver management right. There's so many moving parts. You have to get the tech not just at the kind of algorithmic finding driver thing, right? You have to get the tech with kind of like communicating with the store. Like, how do you make sure that the right order gets to the store in a way that notifies them such that when the driver arrives, the food is still hot, it's ready to go? Like, there's a million and one things to actually work through. And we only had to figure it, like, so I told my team, hey guys, we have days to figure out what the big guys had years and hundreds of millions of dollars to try to figure out, right? So
Billions, you mean?
it's kind of nuts, right? But we were like, we have to do it. Because if not us, then who? Sure, you mentioned there's a whole bunch of food delivery guys that have popped up, right? But no one has done it at the massive scale yet. And we realized why. Because piecemeal food delivery businesses don't work because the tech is inherently not built for scale. If you think about how Lalamove works, for example, if you were open the Lalamove driver app, just one example of the complexity of food delivery, right? As a driver, you will get notifications of orders near you every time an order is placed. So you imagine if it's 50 orders per 5 minutes, it's okay lah. You can see, oh, okay, I'll select and choose this one. What happens when it's 500 orders in that 5 minutes, or an order a second? Suddenly, the app is useless, right? It's like order popping after, like just literally non-stop orders popping up like in the app. And so immediately, the popping up kind of like system is already broken by scale. So the reality is, you know, something we were having this pre-conversation earlier, right? Why people are having a bad so-called experience on Lalamove, I think that was something that was mentioned, it's not because Lalamove is doing a really bad job. It's just that the architecture of the technology is destined to fail with scale, right? The reality is that an order notification app is not going to scale up. What needs to change is that, you know, like the orders need to assign to drivers who will then accept it within a number of seconds and so on and so forth. But the reality is that because it's an open platform which allows anyone to post jobs, it doesn't have to be food delivery, it could be all kinds of delivery, any kind of delivery. What that means is that that system is going to be very, very hard to scale up. So those are one of the few problems that we had to actually solve. We work with multiple logistics partners. So there's a tech problem. Like, how do you actually solve creating jobs in multiple platforms, managing acceptance, the timing of it, the scaling of it? We create thousands of jobs a day. So that you can think about the scale that we're managing, it's actually ridiculous, like tens of thousands of calls to multiple platforms to manage. So the tech is super difficult. Then there's the communication with the store. Like, how do you make sure that the orders, because now we accept pre-orders, and during MCO, there's a lot of people, like you mentioned during Ramadan, they're pre-ordering stuff. So how do you manage all of that? How do you create orders in the store on time? So it's actually very, very complex. Would people get profitable? The thing is this, the reason why food delivery startups have not been profitable in the past is because it's a very competitive market. So what do people in competitive market do? What do businesses in competitive markets do? They subsidize the price. They lower their delivery fees. They give free delivery, right? And so all of these factors is actually the real reason why these startups are not profitable. But if you look at the pure unit economics, when you take 35% of the order, you're actually doing a very, very profitable job most of the time. I remember one of the platforms, they put up this little thing about how a $20 job, they only make like $1 or something. But they fail to tell you that on the same $100 job, they make 10 times more than a $20 job, right? So it's really interesting to see how there is a very like you can position it in a way that makes people go, yeah, we're not profitable. But it's not because your business model is inherently not good. It's because there are kind of units of like economies of scale, data points that you're not sharing with people. And actually, if we were to not subsidize consumer spending, if we were not to liberally give free delivery to people, there is actually room to actually play with this. If you don't pretend to tell people like we're doing marketing for you, and you actually let the restaurants who actually have their own customers, right? All of us have favorite restaurants. All of us have our local restaurants that we love. and we want to go to and we want to support. There's no doubt about it. If we just support our local restaurants, they will survive, right? As long as they have there's margins there. So I think it's very complex. There's all these different things at play, but I would be very curious, I guess, and I'll be questioning, having done all this for the last 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, 2.5 months actually, when people say that it's not profitable, whether it truly is, especially when you're taking that kind of margins. Because we have been able to build, I think, a very sustainable delivery business, even though we're charged 2%. So that's the question mark for me, for everyone else.
No, this is really interesting, right? So you are not at the top of the supply chain, you're not at the bottom of the supply chain, you're in the middle, and you're trying to improve the information flow across. And you believe that technology and optimize information flow to both sides is going to make sense. And you believe that it can be done profitably. Well, I'm not sure, but
anything, Jasmine. This is literally what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not even like hey, 6 months from now, this is going to be profitable. No. It's already sustainable as it is, the model, right? It's okay. Is it sustainable for the whole company? No, because our sales revenues have dropped. Right? It's not like stores closing down. You're not paying for point of sales. Sure. I mean, the whole company, we've had to make big, difficult decisions, right? But as a model, I don't think it's actually if you get it the right things right, like if you get the tech right, which is super hard. I'm like having so many students trying to get tech right. It can be done, but you just problem solving every day, and you have to do it at a very, very like detailed level.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, and you're right. Like 35%. If you can't make a business work with 35%, then the rest of us taking such slim margins, what can we do, right? No, that's really interesting. CC, earlier on you mentioned that, for example, you are selling these cards, right? These loyalty cards. So basically, I buy 100 ringgit a voucher for this small little kopitiam or something because I love them now. And then 2 months later, they close down. And then the customer comes to you and say, hey, CC, I got this 100 ringgit voucher now. Can you refund me? Essentially the problem that Expedia, all the travel platforms, hotels.com, they're all facing, right? Because customers, they say, hey, your hotel now closed for 6 months, but I paid over Agoda. Can I have a refund back? But the hotel already took all the money and, God knows what they're doing. But do you worry about this situation happening? Assuming that 25-30% of restaurants are going to close, is this not a risky thing to do?
Yeah, so I think for us, we know we thought through it and then we go in knowing it, right? And I think that what we have already given the guarantee to our consumer is that if that shop is closed, we would give them back the credits on Fave and they can use it to buy anything else on Fave. So I think that's sort of what we are doing. I think is eCard, I think the way we do it is we do it as a community, right? So I think we build it up for that. So I think we don't look at it to be building a profit business from that, at least during the MCO period, right? And I think today the eCard is still a small part of our overall business. So I think the risk part is small, and I think generally the eCards, people will only buy brands, right? So which means that most of the businesses that come in on eCards with us are the big brands, right? Is there a risk of them going bankrupt? Maybe there is, but it's low, right? So let's say, for example, you buy a TGIF gift cards, Naughty Nuri gift cards, La Justeria gift cards, right? Auntie Anne's gift cards, right? So the probability of it is lower at this group because I think for the gift card product, we generally sell to brands that already people know, because or else likelihood of you doing it would be low. So I think basically as we provide is, I think we are multi-tier of different products, services, right, for different people. So I think deals, it serves to certain segment, Fave Pay serves to certain segment, cashback serves to certain segments and whatnot, right? So I think that sort of catered through, and I think that sort of driving the different parts. So let's say example, in terms of delivery, right? So I think the way we look at it, slicing it different way from what Wai Hong look at it, right? I think there's no right or wrong. I think each of us will play on different parts. So I think where we do decide is, okay, for logistics side, we leave it to them to connect. We basically bring in inbound traffic, right? So basically people browsing Fave, so we get them sales, right? So, and then we focus a lot more on not on-demand delivery, but the next day delivery, right? So example, during Ramadan, people book up puasa next day or a few hours later, right? So I think you buy today for tomorrow buka puasa on morning, so that they can group up their delivery, and then they basically can ship up at a lower cost, right? So I think what we did is basically bringing the sales. So I think different parts will solve different, because yes, some brands can get their own marketing and go out, but not every brands can, right? And I think during the Ramadan, so we focus quite a bit into selling the raw meat and veggie and everything, as well as like the hotel buffet. So a lot of hotel buffet during Ramadan, they were selling it through this, right? Because a lot of them, they couldn't do their real physical buffet. So I think in the end, the challenge and the problems is huge. I think a lot of it, I think where we look at it is, I think each of us will pick where we think we can value add, right? I think, and each of us will look at it, say, okay, we think we can value add this part, create value. Because I think each part of creation value helps certain merchants to solve certain parts of what they need, right? Because every merchants are also different. Each of them will have a different needs. And I think it's all this service providing in to build in through, right? So I think as we don't go down to do the logistic part, and hence I think the unit economics is very different, because we don't think of it that part, right? So I think basically we enable the restaurant and say, okay, there are two options of you collecting delivery fee. One is you pick a rate, we will put it up, right? So then they basically we collect straight and then we pay them. Second is they arrange themselves and they pay. They can use FavePay to pay if they want to. So then they say, okay, 15 ringgit, they just go FavePay, key in the merchant name and send it over. Real time they check, they got it, right? So that drive it through. And with FavePay, they enable them to come back to you, purchase again, right? So I think that's sort of where we look at it right now.
Got it. No, I like it. Like I think, you know, my earlier comment on that, it being piecemeal, I think it's going to be very tough for us as a single startup to solve the whole thing. But I like how, you know, Wai Hong is coming from the angle of technology, because that is what I guess, you know, he's saying that StoreHub is strong at. And what you are saying, that you're coming from the position of marketing, because as sort of like a marketing powerhouse, I can think of few startups that are better than Fave. Probably, you know, very few startups that are better than Fave in terms of the marketing and driving traffic, promotions, loyalty, that sort of thing. So what you are saying is that I'm good at my part of the value chain. Let me see how I can extend this across, right? From my starting point. That's interesting. Well, let me share a little bit about us, and then I'm going to ask you this quite difficult question. So, you know, the time when the traffic actually dropped 40% for us, you know, we all met and we basically saying like, okay, you know, let's reimagine our business. Let's start from a white sheet. You know, what do customers want? What is MCO going to look like? And we started coming up with different initiatives. So one of it is really to be the trusted platform. So essentially, people don't know whether their uncle renovation contractor or their uncle aircon guy is going to be safe. You know, has he done his temperature checks every morning? Has he done his COVID testing? Has he done his sanitation and all that, right? So we wanted to be the platform that gives transparency. And so now for service professionals who have passed all our tests, we have an internal test for it, we give a little COVID badge. So if you are worried about your family and keeping your home safe, you would go for service professionals with the COVID badge, for example, right? Second thing we also did is to really focus on local. So we are, you know, announcing new features that will come out as soon as next week to allow people to hire from their local neighborhoods. So if you need a graphic designer, if your business needs a developer, why hire from Kazakhstan? You know, why hire from far away? When really the people near you, they are the ones who need jobs because they don't have jobs anymore, right? And if you hire from someone who is near to you, you can have the option of meeting that person in person someday. So instead of it being a digital only or online only relationship, it could be online and offline, right? So we did things like that. We also launched disinfection, you know, categories that we deem are COVID friendly or the isolation economy friendly. But I have to be honest to you that these initiatives, they did not make up to 30-50% of our revenues. In fact, the core part of our business, which is you know, cleaning, aircon service, repairs and all that, renovations, still provides maybe 80-85%, even 90% of our business. And these new initiatives that we launched maybe contribute 10 or 20%, but they are not you know, able to make up for the bulk of the revenue, assuming that things went worse. So we are very lucky in that the volumes did not drop much. But have you guys seen any of the new initiatives that you do really make up a significant portion? Now, you might not be able to keep in numbers, but 30% even, you know, has it reached 30%?
That's the difficult question.
You're right, it's tough, right? Yeah, and looking at it, it's also thinking like, wow, if I need to do so many difficult things, right, to make up that 10, 20, 30% of the revenue, now is good time because the demand is so high, right? Everybody is ordering food, everybody's buying groceries online.
I think
but what if the volume falls?
It's not just revenue though, it's cash flow that's the problem. So right now, so in the past, right, I can share with you comfortably that 95% of our customers will pay for a whole year of subscription upfront. Right now it's the opposite. 95% are paying monthly. So even though like number of stores that we're bringing on, in fact, has I think last month was actually higher, the highest month of the year, right? But the reality is that the dollars collected is lower than anything in the last 12 months. Because the number of people that are actually willing to pay for a whole year is just less than 5%. So from it's not just as simple as like, yes, new business model, but how the business owners navigate the challenges of cash flow when everyone is trying to figure out. I think none of you guys would say you've not squeezed your suppliers. Right? Every one of us have been, we've been squeezing, right? We've been trying to squeeze every single drop of cash flow to manage the difficult situation for our company. Similarly, our customers are doing the same to us, right? So I think in that regard, sure, whatever traction that we've gotten with new initiatives, it's good, but we still have to figure out how do we manage this, because the cash flow drops. I mean, you just imagine, right? 95% drop. Now, 95% complete mirror switch. It's just crazy. Imagine last time that 100 deals might get you 100K. Now it gets you like 10K.
I don't know. Absolutely right. And my fear is that we put in you pivoted half your company to BeepIt, and I know some startups that have pivoted 80-90% of their companies to sort of like a new direction. Now, what if things don't happen as we predict, right? So say 3-4 weeks later, MCO lifts, everybody goes happy. For some reason, the number of infections stay low, right? Which means COVID is not really that much of a problem anymore. And then people stop getting food delivery. They stop using online grocery delivery because honestly, it's a pain. Nobody likes online grocery delivery, right? They prefer to just go into the store. And then people just revert to their old ways. So then you have built a business which is, on the assumption that things will be COVID impacted for a long time, and it doesn't turn out that way. How do you manage these two things? Because honestly, I struggle as well, trying to tell the future,
Maybe I share. So many of the people here are a lot smarter than me. So I'm very, very glad to be this panel. I look at things in a very simple way. So
but you have the best hair, Derek, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I beat all of you by having nicer hair. So not my wife would not agree. When this whole thing, the news first came out that China has this COVID-19 thing coming out, I was monitoring the news quite closely because at the time they were reporting like 1,000 confirmed cases or something. This was in January, right? And then I was thinking, how come 1,000 confirmed cases, but every time someone flies in from Wuhan, you always catch someone with it? So like, how can it be? Wuhan's a big city, right? How can that be, So I was thinking, oh, actually, it's probably, this is just my opinion. It's probably around already. It's just that no one's really realized that it's around. And then there was news about like the oil drop and stuff like that. So that kind of rang some alarm bells for me. So this was before MCO. I called in my team straight away that I think they thought I was overreacting a little bit. But I said, no, I think something, there will be a very huge shift coming soon. So this was my thought process at the time, right? So when I was thinking about pivoting, maybe this might work for you. The first thing I figured out was, you're right in saying that the thing you have to do a bit of predicting right now. So the first question we ask is, what's the world going to look like 1 year from now? So everyone has to guess. No one knows, right? So everyone has to make your best guess, right? And then the next question is, but what? So when MCO happened, like how will MCO affect our businesses and all that? So you have a short-term problem and a long-term problem. So one of the first things, so pivoting a company, a business model is not easy at all. And I think the beauty of a startup is actually we can pivot faster than different kinds of companies, but it's still not an easy task. So think of a big corporation. You can't overnight 50% of the business suddenly change, right? It's just not possible. So one of the things we try to determine is try to guess what is short-term, what is long-term. And if it's a short-term problem, if we think this thing is short-term, then we don't pivot that much. We try to do things like if we have the cash to hold out, like negotiate with suppliers and stuff like that, with the hope that when things get back to normal, this thing will become normal again. So I think that's like the very simple way I kind of look at, like, kind of have to figure out whether is it due to the lockdown, or is it really the world will change 1 year from now. So I think a lot of companies are, but Wai Hong has a very good point saying that, but cash flow is if cash flow is a big issue, then you need to kind of shift very quickly. But I think some companies don't have to really pivot that fast, and they can still wait and see a little bit if you have the cash resources, because it may not really pan out as what we think it will be in the long term.
Yeah, if I could just quickly, I know I had this conversation privately, right? I think with Derek a couple weeks ago or not. But it is really about predicting the future and then making decisions based on your prediction. And the way we did it was that we basically took the best guy who knew how to deal with viruses, Bill Gates, and basically took his predictions, right? Because he's probably the only one that's poured in billions of dollars of his own money to actually trying to find a vaccine. And he's saying 18 months away from a vaccine. And the reality is that we will not go anywhere. We will not go back to so-called a normal of travel or visiting a masseuse or a hairdresser until a vaccine is actually in the market. And the reality is that then we have to figure out from now to 18 months what's going to be happening. And with a virus as infectious as COVID, we know that what was likely to happen is that governments will not be able to keep tightened restrictions forever because they're just going to run out of money. And they will have to go through these cycles of loosening and tightening of restrictions, which is exactly what the Imperial study was actually about, right? The university, where they actually talked about how the most countries will actually go through these tightening, loosening, MCO kind of like stages, as and when their healthcare systems are overwhelmed, right? Then they will tighten, then the healthcare systems recover, they will loosen. So having that recognition that this is the cycle up and down of tighten and loosen restrictions, 18 months as the timeline to plan against. What therefore do we need to do as businesses to adapt? The reality is that for most of our customers, they only have 40, 50 days of free cash. So the reality is that they have to act very quickly. For some of us, we still have some cash flow, right? So we can actually kind of manage that perhaps over 3 months, 6 months. And actually those are the startups that I'm most worried about, because those are the guys that kind of like, oh, we're hoping for the normal to come back without taking into consideration actually what's going to happen in the next 18 months. They just think normal will happen. They tahan for 3 to 6 months and then things will be fine. But it's not going to be fine, right? It's not going to be fine. In fact, I think the reality is that I think someone was asking about government grants and everything, and I think our government grants are completely useless. But the reality is that grants are actually not able to save businesses right now, right? The only way that we can so-called save our businesses is have a reality check of the future and adapt accordingly. Whether it's cost reduction, whether that is changing the business model to serve the needs of a tightening and loosening cycle of restrictions, and that kind of 18-month timeline. Psychology of people have changed. I'm not sure if you guys noticed this, but when you put people at home for 2 months, they don't think the same anymore. Their whole entire psychology has changed. They've built a habit of staying at home. And habits are hard to build, but they're also hard to break down. So the reality is that what changes when you put people at home for 2 months? A lot of things have changed, right? The psychology of people, when people go out, I also don't want to touch menu. I don't want to go close to anyone. You mentioned this now, Jasmine, someone comes close to you, you better get away from me, right?
That was not supposed to be mentioned on
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, my other friend, not my other friend. But
Sure.
But all these changes, right, are very, very key.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have a clear, grounded picture of what the next 18 months is going to look like, we will not make good decisions. And we may be wrong, but that's okay. We just need to make sure that we have a prediction of the future that is grounded in truth, or at least in facts.
Very interesting what you mentioned earlier on. I think you actually employed someone to come to your home, right, to cut your hair, if I remember. Also, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be mentioning, but one thing that I felt was that people now feel a little bit uncomfortable about being near others, right? Like you said, 2 months at home have really changed the way that we view others. They actually feel more comfortable about someone coming into their home, because that someone is just one person. They can make sure that they have the precautions around that one person, and they can spray them down and put a mask on them and test their temperature. They actually feel safer doing that rather than going into a salon where they're not really sure who has been there, what germs are in the air. So we might actually see, a fragmentation of services. So rather people coming to one place to get served, now it's more like service professional or services actually coming to people's homes, and they are surprisingly very counterintuitively okay with that, rather than the other thing. And one more thing you mentioned as well earlier is that because it's going to be very challenging to get all these restaurant uncles and all that online. I mean, there's always a learning curve. There's an onboarding process, right? Someone in the Facebook live, Shireen, actually mentioned, I think Marcus also mentioned that a lot of these restaurants, you sometimes need to bring them through the curve of being, on the platform, onboard them, teach them how to use it, pick up the phone at 9 p.m. when they say, hey, where is this button? They say, uncle, it's right there. It's like, oh, this button is it? And put down. So it is an expensive process, right? And that cost of living is increasing, right? If you don't believe me, walk into Jaya Grocer, Tesco, or whatever, your kubis that used to be a certain price is now a lot more expensive. Now, they don't tell you that, but things are getting more and more expensive. F&Bs will be closing down. So, in general, the cost level or the pricing level of most things will go up. Now, this is really weird because if you look at the Asian financial crisis, you look at the dot-com crisis, right? Previous recessions, the businesses that used to fare well or usually fare well are those that are very price sensitive. So those that actually cater to the masses who maybe don't have so much money, disposable income, like they used to have, right? So if things are going to go up in terms of pricing, become more expensive, but yet people have less money, so what's going to happen to the economy?
It's going to be.
I don't know.
I think the reality is that the market economies or capitalism in general is being put to the test. I think COVID is the ultimate accelerator of adoption of new things. We have like customers like Greenview and Lala Chong, like literally your old uncles, right, who have been very comfortable just sitting there and kind of like having their loyal customers come. They, by whatever means possible, will try to adopt technology to survive. I think survival instincts are kicking in, and people are suddenly more willing to change. But some people are just not able to change fast enough and adapt fast enough to the reality of the situation. So if you're asking about the question of, can we save everyone? No, we can't. We just can't. I'm already seeing someone really, really favorite restaurants just saying, sorry guys, it's been a good run, we're shutting down. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, well, the other way to do it is like the peanut butter brand, right? Joby. Say, hey, we're shutting down, but before we shut down, please buy 20 jars of this peanut butter just to save us. Otherwise, no more nice peanut butter anymore. And then people actually bought the peanut butter.
No comment.
It is it's a pretty good one, right? It's quite impressive. My Burger Lab did it, right? It's kind of like fake but focus on one product.
And Joby in the same category, okay? Like, I don't think it's fair.
Sorry, Renyi.
No. I think what Renyi did was very classy. I think what he did was he said, guys, this is the honest truth. We're getting sales, but it's not sustainable. That's why we limit. I mean, they put it in the right way. Joby looked whatever opportunistic or whatever. They maybe did it with the right kind of like approach in the start, and then they ran sponsored ads for it. I mean, I think it's very great. I don't think they're in the same category. I wouldn't put them in the same boat. I don't think it's the same boat at all. I think what Rennie and My Burger Lab did was very, very classy, and they did it well. And I think more businesses should learn from them. I think more businesses should learn to be transparent, to write messages that connect with their customers, their loyal customers, people who know their brand. That is the currency of the new economy. Learning to connect with people through your messaging, through videos, through write-ups on Facebook, through product offerings, through collaboration. That is the new currency. The patterns of the successful businesses that I'm seeing on whether it's our platform or across the board are the ones that are taking time to engage with customers in a meaningful way, collaborating with each other. There is something there's a pattern one, it's very clear. So that's something that is oh dear, yeah.
Okay, so I've got two questions left. One on government. Is government going to, has the government, assistance and grants and all this like budget assistance, has that really helped you guys? And the last one I'll ask later was about, advice to entrepreneurs. But let's deal with this government thing. What can governments do to help? Right? You mentioned that government support has been zero to startups so far, and I agree. Tengku Zafro, please listen. We need more assistance for startups, but what else can the government do to assist startups? I don't know, maybe CC, you want to take this?
So I think in terms of government, I think that I think the government focus on, I think Malaysia government especially focus on a B40 segment, right? So I think and SMEs, especially those that below 75 employees. So I think if you look at for people that earning below 4,000 ringgit and company with size of less than 75 people, I think the support is pretty good, right? It's 1,200 ringgit a month for those segments. So I think for a lot of startups, I think especially those above 75 headcount, and especially that most of your staff are earning more than 4,000, then a lot of it, the support are not applicable, right? So I think that's where the challenge is. I think the government, I think from the MOF and whether from MOF or whether from MOSTI or various agencies, I think a lot of them are doing a lot of engagement. I think the key is also, I think that what can the government afford to do? I think with our country's financial as well, right? So of course, I think like Singapore, they did a lot of great stuff with their job support scheme and everything. But of course, the country has a different level of reserves, the country reserves that they can provide, right? So I think at where it is, I think the engagement is there. I think the intention is there. I think it's how do you drive the right support into it? And I think that from this, and I think what the government provide in a way helps a lot of the smaller restaurants, smaller, let's say beauty salon and everything, especially those that's below 75 income. At least they get covered 1,200 per staff, because for a lot of those people, their staff may be earning like 2,000 ringgit a month. So that's 60% of their income, right? So I think that sort of weighed through, at least in the salary standpoint. Yeah, but I think that for startup, I think that is not fully. And I think in terms of the loans or whether SRF or whether the debt venture loan and everything, I think there's still a lot more that I think how to make it simpler, easier for startups to go through that, the faster process. I think that will be definitely aspects I think that need to be going on, right? I think that's where it is. And I think that as a community, I think for us as well, I think that's what I want to talk about. I think it's also not to rely on grant alone. I think it's how do we leverage on it maybe to go through a certain period, but I think it's building through. But I think that also Malaysia government, the support is until end of June. So which means that a lot of the SME coming July, unless the pre-heating plan is extended, a lot of them will no longer get the support in July 1st. So I think that would be another, could be there's in 4 weeks time, 5 weeks time.
I want to disagree, man. Like, I don't think the grants help the SMEs at all. Like, if you actually do the math for a salon, right? Just say I'm employing 10 people, and the conditions of these grants are that I need to keep everyone employed. But my revenue has dropped 85% minimum, or in some cases, if you talk about salon, it's 100% drop for these couple of months. And so I'm forced to, if I want to take this so-called $1,000, right, keep everyone employed and pay out the full amount of salary for that period of time. And the reality is that for most businesses, it's just simply better to furlough their staff, right? From a cash flow perspective, the amount of coverage is not even close to enough, given that the revenue drops are so high. If the revenue drops for 20 or 30%, sure, no problems, right? I'll keep them on. But there's a reason why governments like Singapore, I think it was Ireland as well, that actually gave 80%, or in Singapore's case, 75% wage subsidy, meaning they were able to, if you're for anyone up to $4,000, they were covering 75% of their wage. That keeps jobs. What the Malaysian government did does not keep jobs. And while we were playing around with the 4% number, I think that's the official number. The unofficial number is likely much, much, much higher. I think the US, we're seeing 20-25% already, right? We're not far from it. Honestly, I think we're not far from it. The reality is that the government grants are not even helping the target audience. The reason why they can't do what Singapore did is not because, they don't want to. I think it's simply because we don't have money. Like, it's really, really, really expensive to cover 75% of someone's wages for 2 months, or I think in this case 3 months. And the problem here is that if you don't do it, jobs will get lost, right? If you do it, you also don't have money. So who do you blame here? You can't really blame the government either, right? So what can we do? I mean, honestly, like for me, the way I see it is that what Singapore did was to buy time for businesses to innovate. Grants alone is just a time delaying mechanism. It's similar to like tighten and loosen restrictions, right? You're just delaying the thing. And similarly, I think for startups as well, none of these grants actually help us because most of us are paying for tech talent above 4K anyways. Most of us would not be, we are seeing drops of revenue, 50, 60, 70, 80% as well. So I think from the grants perspective, right, like the paperwork that is required, that people are required to go through, the kind of, like I think MDV did the debt thing, right? But the amount of paperwork that I'm hearing some of my startup friends having to jump through the hoops for is just ridiculous for a debt, right? Like, and it's not even enough cash flow to last most people for an extended period of time. So honestly, it's just not the right mindset, not the right approach. I don't see the SMEs really being helped. A lot of the SMEs we talk to don't find these grants very useful. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, I think in terms of the distribution of the type of businesses, like you mentioned, I think the SMEs will suffer the most because in a way they have a narrower buffer. And you see a lot of people now, when they're released from their jobs, they go and start up little baking from home. Like I think Jaslyn Cakes also started up, very, very small, right? So you might actually find a movement of SMEs, and then those guys shutting down, and then you have these micro entrepreneurs coming up. They operate from home, so they don't have high overheads and stuff like that. Actually, it'll be interesting to see, after all the recent, not recent, but all the recessions in the past, whether or not you have a proliferation of very small businesses, or was it a movement from big companies to small companies? I'll be interested in looking at that. But thank you. So I've got one more question, right? Knowing that startups, it's tough for us. We are thin margin. Sometimes we rely on a lot of volume for it to make sense for us. 40% of startups are likely not going to be around in 6 months' time, and that is a fact, right? It is the fact that we live with. If you had one advice for a fellow startup or even SME founder out there that is struggling, what would it be? And really useful stuff, okay? No blah blah.
So I think for all the startups out there, I think it's think of your mission. Don't forget your mission. Don't forget your vision. I think of the big vision that you're going to work on, right? Let's say like for Fave, we are focusing on digitalizing. How do you help local offline businesses digitalize? So I think it's thinking of the mission vision and likelihood. I think a lot of the mission for startups, I think is some form of driving digitalizations or whatnot, right? So I think as we go on, it's focus on that. And I think how we do it, the business model, things can shift, but don't shift from your big mission unless the big mission vision no longer relevant, right? So I think it's think on it and then be creative, think out of the box and see how to do it. And I think for those that, I think it divides into two groups as well. Those that have more cash flow, I think then is preserve the cash flow. And I think like what Wai Hong just mentioned, don't be rest on the laurel because things are not going to be back exactly to be where it's going to be it was. So I think it's how do you going to adapt? Where would it be in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, right? Station will shift. And I think it's a lot of it is focusing on where the park is going to go to be rather than where the park is at today. So I think that would be where I see. But I think continuous going on it, I think have the cockroach spirit or whatever kind of call it. I think the rhino spirit or whatnot, but basically be resilient, be adaptive, and I think work through it. I think this is a tough time, but I think tough times don't last, tough people do, and whatever don't break us, make us stronger. And I think Jack Ma also said, today is tough, tomorrow is tougher, but the day after tomorrow will be beautiful. So I think just work on it, and I think stay positive. I think if you feel stressed or anything, there's a lot of fellow entrepreneurs that I think all of us go through crazy moments. I think like Jasmine and me, I think we have so many chats. I think there are a lot of days that we all like feel like we need someone to release stress, everything. I think just go on it and chat to people. I think we all would have days that bad days, crazy days. I think things are not as rosy as everything is, but I think it's going through it, last through it, and you put your heart at work. And I think all the best.
Yeah, just two things. I think the first thing is, I think we all know that it's tough times and that everyone's going to have to make some tough decisions. So don't, like, if you know there's a tough decision that needs to be made, you should make it. Don't keep delaying it. Like, right? So what I mean is, like, if your business needs to change significantly, don't hold on too tight. If it's it's not working already. I think this is like if you need to downsize, you know, for example, and it's very hard, you know. I can imagine like you build the company with your people and all that, right? Those are really, really difficult decisions, how you want to manage that, because I see myself more, and I tell this to the team a lot. I'm basically a captain of the ship, right? And the ship is the one that's holding everyone, not me. I'm not holding on. The ship is, right? And I have to make decisions on behalf of the ship, and some of these decisions are going to be really tough, right? But if you know that the ship is going to sink, you don't want everyone to sink together, you know. So you have to think of it in this way, right? So I want to encourage everyone that if you've been delaying making tough decisions, but you know deep down you know it's the right call, like you should make it. But I think the second one is more of I suppose a message of hope a little bit. Like I've been building this for 5 years already. And in the 5 years, there are many moments that I thought it's the end, it's over. And somehow,
yeah, for your stories.
Yeah, somehow, whoops, we made it. I don't know how we made it, but we made it, you know. And a bit like echoing what CC said, if you have that hope and the resilience, and you keep putting your head down and working through stuff, actually you find a way. I think we all find a way. We will all be able to figure out how to do it. One of the small things I can share that I do personally, I write a lot. Like if your head is muddled and stuff like that, I just have this notebook where I just scribble stuff, just raw. That's like no purpose, just write stuff. And as you write, suddenly you achieve clarity when you look through all your notes. Oh, you have that too, CC? Yeah, so it's very unstructured one. I just start the day, I just like write one thing that's on my mind, and it's trying to start going all kinds of direction. And after a few pages, I look back, I think I need to know what to do. So some things to help you all think about it, but it's going to be tough, but we are here together as a community, so hopefully that helps.
Wai Hong?
Yeah, I'm so good with the black sheep here. And basically say, I don't think it's enough to be tough in these times. And they are very tough times. And I think the reality is that, you know, you mentioned this right earlier, Jes Min, resilience, and you know, we are some of the toughest and the most resilient entrepreneurs we've seen. And I think in the past, this would have been true. I think in the past, being tough, working through all kinds of difficult situations, we've all heard some of Derek's challenges, we've all shared some of our own stories of really coming close to these really difficult situations and just really powering through, being resilient, staying tough. But I think COVID is a very different crisis. And I think the reality of this particular crisis requires a different perspective and different mindset. And so I talked about this, I think in another webinar, and there's a really, really good book. I highly recommend you at least read the book summary somewhere called Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. It is such a great book. And the idea of anti-fragile is if you were to consider what is fragile and what is the opposite of fragile. So for example, if you drop a glass bottle on the floor, it breaks. The glass bottle is fragile, right? But if you drop a rock on the floor and it doesn't break, is that the opposite of fragile? It's actually not. The opposite of fragile is that when you apply pressure and you apply force to something, some object, it gets better. It doesn't just remain the same, right? Fragility is something breaks, something gets worse when it is applied pressure or force. The opposite of fragility is that it gets better when more force and more stress is applied. And there are many examples of this in nature, but the most relatable one I can say is like roti canai, right? The more you stretch the roti canai, the more you apply pressure to dough, the better it gets, right? And that for me is anti-fragile, and that's the right perspective, especially in COVID, because I'm seeing too many startups, right? They're like, hang in there, tahan, couple of months only, be fine. Cannot. Wrong mindset, wrong approach. You cannot stay like that. You cannot tahan only. You have to be like roti canai. You have to allow that stretching process to make you better. You have to allow the pressure, the stress, the problems of the situation to make you better. And you need to have that anti-fragile mindset. Not just stay the same when pressure is applied. Not just be a rock that when the wave hits you, you stay the same. Because by the time the waves stop hitting you, you're already submerged. You know, that's the kind of reality of the world that we're living in. It's changing. And for me, the advice is be anti-fragile, don't be a rock, be roti canai.
Thank you so much, Wai Hong, for this different perspective. I think you've heard from three of the the founders I respect the most probably in the market. I think for us, what I would say is that what has helped us a lot is looking at the data and talking to the customers, because a lot of the things we read in the news, in the media, they are very much like, oh, this is what happened 3 months ago, this is the history. But our data actually gives us an idea of what people are wanting in the future. And they probably cannot say, because most people don't really know how they are going to change. Like Wai Hong says, this is a very transformative process for all of us. We don't actually know what we are going to be like. But using the data, it gives us a clue to what the future might be like, and that will be useful in helping us decide whether or not we want to persevere or pivot, or if you want to be like the glass or the roti canai that Wai Hong just mentioned, right? Data, agility, the ability to innovate fast and furious, and the sort of willingness to get things wrong and fail. I think this is what startups are really good at. We can pride ourselves on a lot of things, but the truth is that we have taken so many knocks and we have gotten so many no's from customers, investors, government, everybody, that we are exceptionally good at being able to say, okay, what I have now doesn't work. Let's start from ground principles again. What is the future going to look like, right? And I think that will really benefit startups like us. It's time for us to wrap up. There were a lot of questions we didn't get to, but feel free to reach out to us personally on LinkedIn. Happy to help answer those questions. And once again, I want to convey thank you so much to our panel, Wai Hong from StoreHub, Derek from WOBB, and CC from Fave. Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for not being boring, because that would have been the worst thing. Really appreciate the candidness, the truthfulness, and the hope that you have brought, and I hope the audience found it useful too. A recording of this webinar will be made available on the Facebook page and as LinkedIn as well, and I'll tag the rest of the guys as well, so that your customers and your fans can actually get to it. Well, thank you very much once again, and I'll see you guys in the future.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.